Hello, or good morning, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Canon, the host of Bubble Radio. So today I have a cute little guest, Minasa Kasai, who was born from the same womb as me. In other words, my little sister. She's currently an undergraduate student in Hokkaido University, specializing in neuroscience, and we mainly discuss mood regulation and exercise, as well as talking some of her personal opinion on the psychological effects of quarantine. Now, a quick disclaimer, she's still a student and is still learning, so if you could listen to this episode as just one point of view, well, as you probably should with anything you hear, then that would be great. References are in the description if you'd like to read into it, but without further ado, let's get into the talk.
About radio.
Okay, so hello everybody. So today I have a guest who is very smart and a passionate. If you have been following my Canon PL Instagram page, she appears a couple of times. Not even a couple of times, like many times here. And I'm very excited to introduce my younger sister, Minasa Kasai. Thank you for being on the show.
Yay!
Yay! Are you nervous?
Nah.
Okay. So, big question. Give us a brief introduction about yourself, please.
Why is that a big question?
Because you have a lot to talk about.
Okay, so... like what I do and stuff?
Yeah, just
okay.
About your life.
Okay, well, I was born in Yokosuka.
Were you really?
Yokohama.
Yeah.
And I was raised in Australia. Mm-hmm. And now I'm in Japan, or Sapporo. Mm-hmm. Sapporo, Japan. I'm studying biology. And I recently joined a lab in comparative neuroanatomy.
Wow.
Studying cetacean brains. So comparing different regions of the brain to other mammals using immunohistochemistry.
That's pretty big to start with. And you're doing something with whales, right? That's
yeah.
Like
sorry, that's too loud.
No,
Wait, is that too loud? Like
no, this is good.
Okay, well, I'm studying not whales specifically, but a lot of different marine mammals.
Okay.
But since I probably won't have time with the corona thing, like because I'm not in the lab, I'll probably just focus on whales for now, and compare it with different brain regions of other mammals.
Nice. So I think we'll get to that. Well, we won't get to that topic. But we'll talk a little bit about your specific specialized field later on. Okay. So I think like some listeners are probably like not aware of our upbringing and might be curious as to why your English is so good. Can you like why
your English is so shit?
Yeah, exactly. So what is your background pretty much? Well, you pretty much said it, but why is your English so good? And do you speak Japanese?
A little bit.
Okay.
But
do you struggle with speaking Japanese here?
Yes. Conversational Japanese is fine.
Yeah.
But formal language, I'm very not good.
Okay. But you went overseas. You were born in Japan, went to overseas when you were 5 years old, right?
5, yeah.
Yep. Until
17.
So that's 12 years overseas, right?
Yeah.
So that means like most of your life.
Yeah, I'm overseasian.
Overseasian. What are some of like the struggles that you have being a Japanese looking person? Well, pretty much Japanese, but like having a different mentality on the inside. Like, do you have any struggles with that? Like coming back to Japan?
My whole life is a struggle.
Explain those struggles.
Okay. Well, first of all, there's the cultural differences, right? So Japan has a very different culture, as we both know, and as I have cried about in the past. So, not to bash Japanese culture at all. It's just something that would be very difficult to accept if you have a different cultural background. And I think that's part of the whole culture shock thing. Yeah. And trying to accept that is one of the biggest challenges of my life.
Is it like because you feel like isolated and lonely in a way?
Yes, and also because you try to see the, like, what do you call it? You try to make sense of the culture, right?
Yeah.
But it's very hard for you to do that because even like Australian culture and Japanese culture are like very, very different.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, obviously there's isolation
Yeah.
from not understanding, but really wanting to get it.
Yeah. Especially if it's your mother country, you know?
Yeah. I don't need what. Oh, yeah. Japan's my mother country.
Yeah, pretty much. And then you having like the Japanese heritage and you're supposed to have, you know, certain ways of being Japanese and coming back here and not experiencing what you have expected is probably a big, like, not gap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we both look Japanese.
Yeah.
And we're expected to know that. And we were expected to know the Japanese language. But then when you see the complete opposite, I feel like a lot of people have the reaction of like, oh, she's just stupid.
Yeah.
Or like she's like really socially just weird.
Yeah.
You know? Which is kind of true, but still.
Same. And I think like that makes me wonder, like people who don't look Japanese, right? But have a lot of Japanese beliefs. Compare that to us who looks Japanese and have, you know, overseas beliefs or whatever. Which one do you think is like harder? Like, because a lot of people kind of complain like, oh, just because I don't look Japanese, I feel like so isolated. But we feel isolated too because we look Japanese, but on the inside it's like completely different. So I guess like, I don't know.
I feel like being not looking Japanese on the outside is a lot harder because a lot of people here judge by appearances.
Yeah.
So at least for us on the surface level, we still have some level of like acceptance, but there's that gaijin like
but you struggle with that acceptance.
Yeah.
Like people think you should act a certain way, but we don't.
Yeah.
So that's another hurdle.
Hadoru?
That's another hurdle.
Yeah.
Like a brick wall.
Yeah. Like an obstacle.
Yeah.
Maybe I think, both of them is a serious mindfuck.
Yeah.
I'm allowed to
You're allowed to swear. Yeah, for sure.
Sorry, Dad.
And you have been studying in Hokkaido University, which is one of the leading universities in Japan. And you major in biology, am I correct?
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Yes. But you're specialized in comparative neuroanatomy.
Yeah.
Okay. And is that different to something like cognitive neuroscience?
Yes, it is. Well, I guess cognitive neuroscience is the broader term for it.
Okay.
So it's exactly what the name says. It's looking at cognition from the perspective of the brain. So with that, you can use so many different types of approaches. Right. And I'm not like specializing in comparative neuroanatomy. Like I'm not an expert, obviously.
Yeah.
But I'm using that to try to understand like cognition and emotion and stuff like that.
Right.
So it's just one way to look at the brain.
Okay, so comparative neuroanatomy is a part of cognitive neuroscience, pretty much.
You could say that, yeah.
Yeah. And is that something different to, for example, like behavioral neuroscience?
Yeah, behavioral neuroscience is really not looking at, well, it's a very like gray zone, I guess, because if you say behavioral science, right, you're looking at obviously the behavior of animals and humans and how they interact. So it's, I guess, a little less related to the brain structure. But if you're talking about behavioral neuroscience, that can also include comparative neuroanatomy because you're looking at the anatomy of the brain to figure out why that behavior occurs. So it's all very much linked, and I feel like if like trying to separate it does create barriers. Because the whole what do you call it? The study of neuroscience in itself is like very integrative. So you have a lot of different fields coming in.
And that like makes me think that even if you have gray zones in the field of neuroscience, right, you must have gray zones in other fields as well. Like, for example, like seeing activities in the brain And, you know, you can actually like directly observe some physiological factors, numbers going up, blah, blah, blah. And we can directly measure that. But I also feel like it could also be very subjective. Like, for example, I feel better or I feel this emotion. Like, is it hard to draw like a line to separate, for example, like a field with psychology and sociology and neuroscience as well?
Well, I guess what we want to do is not separate it in a way, because like we know how the brain works. We know that it's electrical firing and chemical signaling, right? And we know the different circuits, but then even if we know that, we don't know how subjective feeling comes from just that. We can look at the physical part of everything, and that's what people consider as science, right? But then we also want to integrate psychology and philosophy into it, because that's not independent. You know? And we still don't know, like, why do we feel this way or why do we think this way? And I feel like by separating subjective and objective, that creates like a misunderstanding. People just think, oh yeah, neuroscience is just looking at the physical part of everything, and you can't tell with just that, you know. So what I'm really actually interested in is like bridging that gap between subjective and objective, which can be a little bit scary because you're trying to find like the physical mechanism of something that's not there. Like it doesn't seem like it's there. So that can be really interesting, but it's a very difficult.
Is that even like, do you think it's like possible to even study that? Because there's so many factors involved, right? And I feel like it's very, very hard to just like, I don't know, even come up with anything like, you can't really say a lot, right? Because everybody's different, and that's what makes it very, very hard. Everyone experiences different things and stuff like that. So good luck to you.
But even with individual variations, right? Like that's when sociology becomes really important, and like, what is it, anthropology? Like that kind of, even those fields. So we're just trying to integrate all of these fields together because they're all trying to basically, I feel like a lot of them try to answer the same question, but from a different viewpoint.
Right.
And like, what is life, basically?
There's no right or wrong, right? Pretty much just like because obviously like different fields and different specialists have different point of views and stuff like that. So,
but one perspective can be limiting.
But do you like, obviously you study a lot of like different topics. Like you study psychology and other shit like that. Does that help you like with your specialized field? Yes, it does. Okay.
But then sometimes I do feel frustrated. Because I read psychological studies and like part of my brain is like, that's a lot of bull crap. But then another part is like, okay, maybe I can use that to like enhance my understanding of everything else.
It's like many voices speaking in your head.
For sure.
That is so frustrating.
Conclusion, that's so frustrating.
Well, so I wanted to start. Well, mainly today I'm thinking of discussing physical exercise and mood regulation. Okay. And I think it's important first to cover what is a big question. What is mood and how is mood regulated in the brain? And maybe you can touch up on what kind of areas of the brain are involved.
Okay. That's a big question. Like, and we've had arguments about it.
So, it's very hard writing these questions and not knowing like a lot of your field. So,
and I only know the surface level. First of all, I want to note that I'm just a student who knows basically nothing. But I just want to ask to you, like, what do you think mood is?
Mood? Emotion is the first thing I think. And thoughts. Maybe when thoughts come together, it creates a certain...
like a feeling, right? Like that kind of definition, I guess, is very common. But then like what you just did is describe a word with another word. So you just keep asking like, what is it? What is it? What is it? And what does that mean? What does emotion mean? What does that subjective feeling mean? And that's when we get to like very like a boom, brick wall. So a proposed definition can be thought of as like mood is a prolonged subjective feeling.
Okay.
Right? So it's not as intense as emotion, is what scientists say. And it's not specific to a certain stimulus. So it's not like you seeing a bear and you feeling fear. It's a little bit different to that because that's instantaneous, it's short term. But mood is like an overall like state of being, right? Like that's what you get from the word mood. So even like how mood is regulated really depends on the type of mood as well. And obviously our definition of it. So that in itself is even debated.
Right.
So like, do we have one definition for happiness or like a happy mood? Like a sad mood, do we have one definition for that? And that has like a lot of different like cultural variations as well.
Yeah.
So that comes into play and that gets really complicated.
Yeah.
And what differentiates mood from emotion. But that was like the definition that I just gave is just one possibility.
Right.
You know. So because of this, like the mechanism is very hard to like understand.
Do you think it's like something that it can be controlled? So do you think like mood, for example, like I go outside and I feel good, is that like a conscious thing or is that like a subconscious thing?
So I just want to talk about a couple of theories of how mood is affected.
Okay.
And maybe that can help to answer the question.
Okay.
Okay. So first I want to explain the classical view that people have of emotion. This is the one that makes the most sense to us.
Okay.
So it seems that to us, like when we think about mood, it comes out of nowhere, right?
Yeah.
Like it's built into us. So with this in mind, scientists have tried to look for fear circuits and anger circuits and this like definite like neural circuit for one emotion or one mood. But that's when we hit a brick wall. And so we've actually found no emotional footprint, which means like there's no evidence of one category of emotion having one neural circuit and one definition.
So like an anger circuit.
There's
like happy. We don't have that.
We don't have that. Like we can't find that.
Okay.
And that is that's called the emotion paradox.
Okay.
So that's the emotion paradox.
Okay.
Like we experience what we think is like fear, surprise, happiness, and it seems that they're in these categories, right? But we can't find the neural basis for them. That's the emotion paradox.
So it's not true.
I mean, with that approach, it's very difficult to move forward. So there's another theory, right, that's put forward, and I think it's really interesting, put forward by cognitive neuroscientists, and that's called the theory of constructed emotion. So one book that I'm reading right now is called How Emotions Are Made by Lisa Feldman Barrett, and it just describes how, well, I'll give you an example. So we're not an example, like an analogy. We're making predictions in our everyday world, right? So when we see something or we experience a situation, we associate it with our past experiences.
Right.
Yeah, and we try to relate it to anything statistically related to what we've experienced before. So this is our way of our brain trying to save energy by trying to match the experience. So that's the predictions that we make in everyday life.
So it's very relative. Everything that we feel is relative to what we felt before.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. So by trying to predict what we've seen in the past, that's how we... What do you call it? Sorry. That's how, obviously, we save energy and we, like, act effectively in that environment.
Okay.
So that one way that we could look at mood with this in mind is positive mood regulation. So by predicting the environment, we minimize uncertainty, right? So that reduces anxiety, that reduces stress, and that can actually be seen in the release of neuropeptides.
Okay.
So when we try to minimize uncertainty in our environment, we feel that we are like calm, that there's less to worry about.
Okay.
Because we've seen it before, right? So that's a way, looking at it functionally, that's a way that mood could be linked to our prediction of the world. So when we encounter stimuli. And another way that we can look at it in terms of like negative valence mood is when the prediction does not match what we expect. So in this way, our body actually sends out signals for us to be able to adapt to that new environment.
Right.
So, for example, in the book that I just mentioned, the author actually describes an example of if you're walking past your scary boss, right? The brain predicts the need for an increase in energy, right? Because you need to adapt somehow to that. It might be like not a very good example, but that's what your body does. So it tries to, I guess it could be considered a stress response, and tries to increase the amount of energy available for you to adapt to that stimulus.
Okay.
And I guess this is what we could categorize as nervousness or fear. And so these cascades of physiological responses, such as the release in cortisol and increase in blood sugar levels, is what creates that notion of like, I'm freaking out here. You know what I mean?
And that's mood.
That could be considered mood, but mostly it's you being aware of that physiological response. It's not the response in itself, but you being aware that you're experiencing it, which is called interoception.
Okay.
So interoception is the awareness of your bodily states and what is happening to you. So that is where you being aware that you're experiencing a physiological response could be linked to what mood is.
Oh, so you feel it first. So there is a certain physical reaction first, and then you are feeling a certain way about that physiological reaction.
So,
wow.
Yeah, so even if, like I explained to you before, even if you're experiencing the same physiological response in a different context, right, that's going to induce a different type of mood state.
Right.
So if you have, for example, if you're standing on stage and you experience that, like that rush of adrenaline or like, you know, the cortisol levels rising, that can be thought of as just stage fright. Or I guess that's both negative when you're fearing your boss and fearing the stage. But like it could be considered excitement as well, you know? So there's different definitions that we can categorize these kind of like responses. So we are pretty much like controlled by environment. I guess you could,
or by our body.
Not much. Controlled, but affected. So it's not that the environment controls us. It's actually like a bidirectional. So we are affected by our environment, and like, but it really depends. It doesn't mean that every single person has the same thing, right? So everything, it depends on the person and it depends on the environment. So it can't really say whether like environment 100% affects us.
Yeah. Okay. Those 3 theories?
It was 2.
2?
Yeah.
It sounds like 3.
Yeah, I mean, the classical view and then the
theory of construction.
The constructed emotion in terms of positive mood. So minimizing uncertainty reduces stress. And then when the predictions don't match is when we experience our body reacting. Right.
Okay.
So that is just like really just the tip of the iceberg. Some people say that we experience cognition first before we experience the physiological responses. So we can think, oh, this situation has made me scared before. I feel scared, and then the physiological responses come about. But that's a little bit less popular view.
Okay.
But like, it might seem like, I just want to add that it might seem a little bit like, oh, we're hopeless. We're just a victim of our own bodies. But in reality, these subjective feelings are really important because they drive us to the next action, right? So they make us avoid certain situations, or they make us motivated to do certain things. So these things, subjective feelings, are still very important.
Okay. And I feel like, yeah, exactly what you said. It does sound like a very, like a subconscious thing. Like, it's not something that we do have control over. Well, for me, it does sound like that. And, you know, maybe people who just listen to what you said might be like, who cares about that, where emotions come from? Because I just know that I feel it, right? Like, what is the point? Like, how would this all be practical? Like, knowing this, how is this piece of information useful in the big picture?
Okay. Well, I think that's a really good question, actually, because where I described that we could feel, because of this theory, we could feel that we're a victim of our own bodies. But like you described, our common perception of emotion is actually a lot more restricting. Because it's basically saying, oh, I just feel it, right? Like, there's nothing I can do about it. But I feel like this shows that your environment is affecting you. So the way that you change your environment can affect the way that you feel, I feel like. So, basically being able to understand that you're not just one body.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you are.
Yeah.
But, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
that you can somehow interact with your environment so you have healthier emotions and emotional reactions. And understanding the mechanism of emotion is just, for me, it seems very important.
For sure, because, I don't know, like the first classical view of it's easier for us to believe it because it's easier for us to understand. Yeah. Like, it's more of a convenient piece of information, like piece of, you know, a definition of what emotion is.
Yeah.
But knowing like all these different, and these two are just, as you said, tip of the iceberg. So there are tons of other theories and stuff like that as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, even with, like, just a little bit off tangent, but like, even with genetics, right, people don't know why we have certain combinations of chromosomes. But for when I was learning it in high school, and I used to ask, why is there just random mixing of chromosomes? People just summed it up to like, oh, it's just the way it is. It's just the way that it happens. And leaving just summarizing it in that way, for me, I feel like it's not a good enough explanation. So emotion just happens. Yeah. It's just the way things are. Yeah. I feel like that's a very limiting way to think about it.
And it feels like you did, like, to come to this point of interest, I feel like you asked so many questions about, like, in your head. Like, for example, why do I want this job? Because of this. Or because in the end, it's always like, because I want to be happy. But then I feel like you proceed to question, what does it feel like to be happy?
Why do I need to be happy?
Yeah. What is happiness? Like, what is emotion? I feel like this is like, I don't know, maybe there's like a deeper level, but I feel like the basic foundation of just, I don't even know how to explain.
Yeah.
What it feels to be human.
It's not I would say it's not the most pleasant conversation to have.
Yeah.
Because it's like basically questioning everything in your life. But for me, that's just how I find like ease and, you know, accomplishment or whatever. But I can understand 100% why even questioning something that feels so natural to us can be like not scary but mendokusai.
Yeah.
that emotion in itself, you don't know.
Yeah, that's
like,
true.
how would you describe that in English? Because there's no words. Bothersome? Annoying?
Too much effort.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah. Fuck, I forgot what I was going to say. But I feel like some people might be like, okay, like you just said, I feel very, like, controlled by my body. And to some degree, that might be true, right? do you ever like feel restricted learning about all these things?
Yes and no. When I was reading about free will, I felt like dying because I was like, fuck, we have no free will.
Yeah.
But I feel like with that in mind, it's like, it's just up to experimentation, you know? Like, I've experimented with myself, and that sounds so weird.
It makes sense.
Yeah. Like, for example, when I first learned that there was a fast track and a slow track to emotion, which I explained when we weren't recording.
Right.
But just basically, like, after time, your cognition starts to take over the natural instincts, right? So I've tested that when Ru, our brother, when he made me mad one time, I just separated myself from the situation.
Right. Like physically?
Yes.
Okay.
And then I just sat in the toilet I just sat there and I was like just trying to calm myself down before acting on it. And then I came out and it was completely different because and same with like when I'm working at the call center, right? There's an angry customer that comes onto the phone call and then I'm like, okay, this person is angry. I'm going to just put them on hold for about 3 minutes.
Right.
And then after you come back, they're a little bit more like able to think clearly.
Right.
And I feel like that is in itself is amazing. Like if you're feeling impulsive anger, just separate yourself from the situation because in that instantaneous like moment, you might be a victim of your psychology.
Yeah.
But then if you just think of like train yourself to separate yourself from the situation, it might help to alleviate.
For sure, because sometimes when you are super angry, like the rage is crazy, that you don't really see anything except for that.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important to, and it's a lot of effort. I think it takes a lot of strength to remove yourself from that situation because you just want to go at it.
And rage is
victim of your own
biology.
But
yeah, I mean, you might think that. So what I just explained with the what is it, theory of constructed emotion, that rage is coming from that your prediction didn't match what the situation was, right? But then if your previous predictions are, I've had this experience of rage before, like you put that in your memory, like last time I separated myself from the situation and I was like, okay, maybe I'll do that now, you know? Like it might seem a little bit hoopla,
yeah,
like it makes like sense, I feel like.
Yeah.
To like even applying that theory.
Yeah.
It shows that yes, you can change your reaction. No matter how much free will is an illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just by even acting on something, even if you don't think might help.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Okay. Well, I think that was like a really basic topic that we needed to cover because I really do want to move into like the topics of exercise because this is an exercise podcast.
Yeah.
And I feel like physical activity has received a lot of like attention for its health benefits, especially, I don't know, I feel like recently it has, maybe in like the past 30, 40 years. Yeah. But, it has, there's data saying that it improves microbiome, leading to like a better immunity, like it helps with metabolic diseases like diabetes and glucose like intolerance, and bone density, of course, cardiovascular health. And I think like a large area that has been studied is like its effects on the brain as well. Like on the last episode, I also talked about with my friend Ayano, who's a graduate student in neuroscience. Yeah.
You just interviewed.
And we talked about like the effects of physical activity on the prevention of Alzheimer's disease. Yeah. Right. I've read a few things. It's also been observed that exercise, especially aerobic exercise, has some antidepressive effects.
Yeah.
And I don't know, there seems to be like emerging evidence that exercise does promote similar effects as some antidepressants. And they, some doctors use it as like a treatment option as well. Like they have like they put prescribed exercise and antidepressants. But at the same time, I also wonder if physical exercise was effective, just as effective, then why do we still take medication? Like I also wonder those things, and I wanted to know like what are your takes on it. And I know that it's not very clear, so it's very hard to say, but if there were or if there weren't any benefits of exercise on our mood or what would you say is the mechanism behind it?
Okay, that was a long ass question. No, but I feel like, first of all, like when you said, why do people still take medication, right? When we're talking about depression, it's a chronic illness that is characterized by loss of interest and lack of motivation. So it makes sense that people who are depressed does not have enough motivation to keep up a regular exercise program. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what I thought when I was listening.
To step even outside of the door to move your body.
That is the illness in itself. You can't, that is the problem of they're not able to maintain that consistency in working out and trying to create that motivation in the first place. So I feel like that's why people go to medication, because it seems like a quick solution. But that aside, I feel like there are benefits 100% of exercise on your brain. I did look up a little bit on depression, the effects of exercise on depression. But first I want to revise on the terminology, right? So you use depressed and grief in synonymous ways, but I feel like depression is a completely different word. So as I described, it's chronic illness, and it's feelings of negative valence and arousal, which is basically negative mood, a loss of interest, lack of motivation, to the point of affecting your everyday life.
Right.
So with that in mind, that in itself, there's a lot of different symptoms, a lot of different characteristics to it that we still do not understand.
Right.
And with the mechanism uncertain, it's difficult to actually be like, this exercise affects this because of this. There's no direct cause and effect relationship that we can see, because we don't know the mechanism of depression.
Yeah.
So, but that aside, there are some popular approaches. So I'm going to raise 3.
Okay.
So the first one is very popular. It's in Legally Blonde, increasing of endorphins, right? Which makes us happy. So that is a very tip of the iceberg statement, but it does have some, truth behind it. So the endorphins are a class of neurotransmitters, right? And these are used to communicate between neurons. So depression is known, actually, one of the theories of the mechanisms of depression is that it's a natural decrease or deficiency in serotonin and norepinephrine levels. So deficiency in all of these neurotransmitters that are essential to regulate mood and basically to regulate everything in our brain.
Yeah.
So with that theory of the neurochemistry being the mechanism of depression, exercise can affect that, because the exercise makes those chemicals more readily available. So
do we know that endorphins are linked to depression?
Endorphins, well, it's very, endorphins in itself is known as the run, inducing the runner's high.
Yeah.
So I guess if depression is a lack of motivation, lack of positive mood, endorphins are the opposite of that. So it's an endogenous opioid,
right?
Which sounds good at first, but
I don't know if it sounds good.
But yeah, it basically reduces pain and boosts pleasure.
Right.
So there are many studies that tried to test this theory, and I looked at it, but a lot of the results are still inconclusive.
Right.
So you can't really like definitely state this is the cause and effect. But there are also other neurotransmitters involved. So like there's dopamine. So one study actually, there was an increase in dopamine levels in the prefrontal cortex of young male rats. So it actually shows an increase in dopamine when you exercise. So that dopamine has actually been found in like PET scans to indicate the willingness to expend effort for larger rewards. So it's more about your motivation. So dopamine can have relations to motivation.
Right.
Endorphins can give us that high that we feel when we exercise. So with these kind of, I guess I didn't mention that endorphins might be deficient in depressed patients, but that's kind of I don't know, it's a bit of a gray zone there as well. But usually depression is a lot of like a bunch of neurotransmitters that are lacking. So that's like one theory. So we're talking about the chemicals in the brain. And then another theory is talking about the physiological approach. So I'll try to make this as short as possible.
Okay.
But there's it might be useful to actually just know in general, but there's a pathway in your body called the HPA. So the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. So just to very, very briefly explain it. So the hypothalamus in the brain releases a chemical called corticotropin releasing hormone, and that activates the pituitary gland in the brain as well. That releases adrenocorticotropic hormone, and that activates the adrenal cortex. So there's three different.
So it's like a cascade.
Involved. And the adrenal cortex releases cortisol, which is the very famous cortisol, known commonly as the stress hormone, although that is a little bit of a, misinformation. But this pathway is really important when you're thinking about depression and stress in general, really. So in depression, you actually have a hyperactivation of this pathway. So
hyperactivation meaning too much.
Yeah. So there's an overall increase in the cortisol response to stress. So you're more, vulnerable to stress, I guess. And you're constantly having that stress response. So obviously that's going to have detrimental impacts to your mental health. So when you're thinking about this, exercise actually has a very interesting relationship with depression in this perspective. So exercise stimulates the same axis. So when you're experiencing that, for example, if you're running and experiencing those huffy, puff, puff, puff. Yeah.
I don't know if that's how you run. But
blood pressure and, you're feeling all of these things. That is known to be part of the stress response. You're experiencing the physiological responses to that because it might be a little bit weird, but exercise can be considered a stressor.
Yeah, no, I've definitely heard about that, yeah.
In the most positive sense of the word.
Yeah.
So during exercise, we experience that physiological response. But then after exercise, we experience lower cortisol levels. So that's about 90 minutes after exercise. So in this way, we can think that exercise affects the activation of the HPA axis to a given stressor.
I've heard of this, sorry to interrupt, I've heard of this thing before. It's people who trains, people who run, people who does resistance training are so used to receiving stress and putting up with that stress that a lot of the other stresses in life don't feel like too much of a stress anymore. I've heard about that. That's why it's like a mental training as well, is what I've also heard. I don't know if that has anything to do with this.
I think so, because it actually improves the recovery from recovery of cortisol in response to stress.
Right.
So not resetting, but like regulating that natural stress response cycle.
Yeah.
Whereas in depression, that's all over the place. It's hyperactive and constantly doing stuff.
Yeah.
So in that way, exercise could improve the physiology of you. But
I didn't even think of depression as a very stressful disorder. I feel like it was like lack of motivation.
yeah,
No anything. I don't know
Yeah.
because I've never had depression before.
yeah. So, I mean, when you think about stress, you think about excitatory, right? Like, you think of like jumpy, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like depression is like the result of feeling too much of that. So I guess it's if you have a rise in stressor chemicals, that is a self-protection response, right? And if you're consistently experiencing that like self-protection, you're going to feel like unmotivated.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know the link between those two actually, like, but I feel like that is the symptoms are the result of too much stress.
So maybe that could be like the link between anxiety and stress, depression as well.
Because they're used actually quite hand in hand, right? Like anxiety and depressive disorders. So like both disorders seem to have like very like similar mechanisms, I guess.
Yeah.
Even though they seem different, but most of the time it's a self-protection response that is overactivated. If you're thinking about the physiology of it. But obviously that's with major depressive disorders. But with other depressive disorders, there's different symptoms. So I can't like say that this is that. So,
Okay.
yeah. So that's the physiology of it. And the third perspective is the psychological, which is the most airy kind of hypothesis, I guess. And that's just saying that exercise provides a distractor to not focus on the problems that you're experiencing when you're feeling the symptoms of depression. So this talks about how cognition affects your physiology. So this can be actually counterintuitive and like contradictory, considering what we just talked about our physiology affecting our psychology. But like I think it's something worth looking into because I feel like your way of thinking about this is going to be like more psychologist, but your way of thinking about something can influence the benefits of that experience, right? So, for example, if you're an athlete and you're experiencing a lot of pressure to succeed, that's a negative effect on that sport that you're doing. So that can make it not like beneficial for your body.
Right. Like beneficial, like as in like in a physiological way?
Yeah.
Okay.
I feel like
how you think about that sport.
Yeah.
Both.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's something worth looking into.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that exercise and mental state is very bidirectional. So you have exercise affecting your mental state and mental state affecting your perception of exercise. You know?
Yeah.
So the way that you think about... So if you just think exercise is positive, exercise is great, there are some other arguments that come about when you're thinking about that because overwork, over-exercise.
Yeah.
Or like athletes with a lot of pressure from exercise.
Definitely, yeah.
So, yeah, and that can affect...
Okay.
Yeah, and
so you thinking that exercising is good. Just even that, just knowing that.
Yeah.
Or you thinking that.
Yeah.
Directly affects how you feel after you exercise, even.
Yeah. It seems very like...
That makes sense, though.
It seems a little bit all over the place, but I feel like, for example, as I explained to you before, when I'm running on the treadmill, right? If I have a negative association with exercise, I feel like I wouldn't get the benefits of that exercise regime because at least I wouldn't feel it. You know, maybe physiologically you might like your body might be better, but your mental state will not be better.
Yeah.
Because with the theory of constructed emotion, right, your surroundings affect the way that you think about your physiological responses, as I explained. So if you're feeling that, as I said, the stress response that's induced by exercise, but you have a negative idea of exercise, then I feel like your body will interpret that as a negative stress response. So I feel like that could be an interesting way to look at it.
Yeah, but that's still, it doesn't mean that it's not effective, right? Like it could be, you know, how you take a placebo pill that, and doctors say, oh yeah, if you take this, your stomach ache will go away. You take it. You think it'll be good. And it actually does make it better.
Yeah. In
like
some
maybe
cases,
it could be, it could be something related to that. But that doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. You know, like it's still an effect.
It still works.
Yeah, so I guess that's okay as well. Yeah. Okay, so you went through 3 things to sum it up. So like the 3 approaches. So one is like the chemical approach to it. So the release of like neurotransmitters and hormones that make you feel better.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then the second is like the physiological approach, which is by you by having exercise, which could be thought as a stressor. It helps you deal with other stressful situations in your life, maybe.
Yeah, it helps to like put that
neutralize.
Yeah, I guess because it helps with the hyperactivity of the stress response in depression.
Okay. Yeah. And the third is the psychological approach, which we just explained. By you thinking that exercise is beneficial, then it's hard to explain. But
I feel like that's just like my own little tangent of it. But I feel like the overall, there's what do you call it? There's a popular hypothesis about exercise being a distraction from your problem. So distraction being the key word. So that's the psychological part.
Yeah. Okay. And even just like you exercising and you becoming a healthier person, you know, like physiologically, you know, and that could have like an indirect effect on the brain. Yeah. Maybe.
That idea in itself, I feel like, is why a lot of people feel good after exercise because they feel like they're doing the right thing.
Right.
So if you're procrastinating, but you're procrastinating with work, I've experienced, then you still feel like it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I feel like that was a very shit example, but it makes sense.
It makes sense. It makes sense. Just by thinking you're doing something good.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe, I know you're not like a full-on sport exercise expert, but have there been any studies on like what kind of modes and frequency, intensity of exercise is beneficial? Do you think resistance training is still beneficial for the 3 points you just mentioned?
I think, yeah. No, but from what I've read, I feel like the benefits aren't mode specific at the moment. Because there's a lot of different studies that have been conducted to try and find out the benefits of exercise. And they've used both aerobic and anaerobic studies. In terms of the what do you call it? The chemical aspect of it, we can't really measure that in humans.
Right.
But in studies on animals, like rats, they've actually used, what was it? They used wheel running. So that would be aerobic, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. When I think about that, I just imagine a rat doing resistance training, strength training,
bench pressing.
Yeah, so it's hard to find that because there's only really animal studies.
Yeah, for sure. But the other two, like and the physiological and the psychological, I feel like it could link to resistance training as well.
Yeah,
for sure, because it's definitely it's definitely a stressor. by you training with weights. And it's also you thinking it's a good thing when you're training with weights.
Yeah.
It could also be beneficial. Maybe, yeah. I don't know about the first one though. But yeah.
I mean, like, if I'm lifting up a box, like when I'm moving house or something, that's annoying.
Yeah.
But then when I don't really lift, but if you're lifting, like weights in the gym, it's like I'm doing something good for my body. So the mentality is really important.
Yeah, for sure. Mentality, which leads me on to the next topic. Like, even just like right now in this current situation of the coronavirus and you have to stay indoors, not being able to do something that would seem like, you know, that could be a good thing. Like going outside, going for a walk, going to the gym, but you can't really do that. I feel like, okay, lockdown, quarantine is such a good idea to, you know, keep the virus from spreading. And there's been tons of studies done on that. But do you think on the other side, I'm not saying that quarantine is bad, that people staying indoors for such a long time, they have some like psychological, negative psychological effects. What do you think if you stayed indoors for months? Do you think that has...
I would like to hope not. But even like first-hand experience, staying indoors for a couple weeks has had effects on me. And I think it's because of the lack of structure that we have in our lives, of going outside, going to work, going to the gym, and like having a space for you to do one thing and focus on that one thing has disappeared with the quarantine. So I feel like this lack of structure really has an effect on our lives. Because we're not getting the correct reward. What do you call it? Stimulus, reward, like mechanism going on there. So I feel like that can be bad for your mental health. And also the lack of exercise. Which, do you want me to talk about the benefits of exercise? So the lack of exercise, I feel like with this quarantine is everybody's going to stay indoors and live a sedentary lifestyle. So that can have tremendous impacts on our mental health for like the reasons that I've mentioned. So it's going to make us a lot more susceptible to stress. And like we're going to, I guess we're just not going to have those benefits that I talked about.
For sure. And we, like us human beings, we strive on social interaction. And social stimulus. So it's like not having any of that, it's like not living.
Sorry, I forgot to mention the social aspect of it, which is like a big factor.
Do you think it's the same as people interacting outside and people interacting through the internet?
I don't think so.
I'm
more of the meet them face to face kind of person. So I don't know. It's not with Zoom and stuff like that. It's like audio and visual. That's all. There's no other aspect of it. There's no sense of touch.
Yeah.
Kind of touch your friend.
Smell?
Yeah,
you're not going to smell your friend.
But... And your different little social cues that you get. It's just one screen. That's very limiting. More limiting than we think it may be. Because we feel like just having conversation is just like exchanging words. But that's not all it is.
Yeah, definitely. I personally don't like talking or having interviews through the internet because I feel like I can connect more with that person if I talk to them face to face, and it makes such a big difference. But I don't know if it might not be the same with other people, because other people have nomikais on Zoom, or parties on Zoom. I don't know if I can do that.
Yeah, I mean,
it's so different.
I feel like with this coronavirus, the society will change, like be impacted by it. So there might be more like digital meetings, virtual meetings, sorry, in the future. But I feel like that's just our way of adapting to the environment, right? Obviously, we need social interaction. We need to go outdoors. But it's just we have to take the measures necessary right now to adapt to our environment.
Yeah. And maybe but it's like, if it went for months, it would be very hard, don't you think?
Yeah, I would assume so.
Yeah.
But as with anything, I feel like humans can have the ability to, adapt just to their environment.
Adapting. My brother's company, guys.
Follow them.
And also, sorry, I might go a little bit off topic, but as regards to like the coronavirus, when I talk to other researchers or friends, they usually mention, well, I have very optimistic friends, and they usually mention revolution.
Revolution?
Evolution? Beatles album.
No, but revolution makes sense. It could be revolutionary.
Oh, yeah. But talking about evolution, like biological evolution.
Yeah.
What is that? What do they mean?
I'm gonna get hated if I...
It's just your opinion.
What do your friends talk about?
Like theories. Like it was meant to happen.
Like theories.
Evolution.
It's not that
theory.
it was meant to happen. It's just, it happens all the time.
Yeah. Without even us knowing, right?
Yes.
And we adapt to that environment.
Well...
And
I guess it's a little bit hard to answer that. Because, like, with this coronavirus, there's death tolls and you know that things are happening. But I don't know how much we adapt to, like, other animals, you can see them adapting to their environment. But with humans, I feel like a lot of people say that we're out of the food chain because we've actually constructed a world of our own, basically. And we've constructed systems that don't depend on those things. But now with this big-ass coronavirus, I just sounded like so Australian.
Big-ass. Yeah.
It's impacting our structure that we've created, so even like I feel like your answer to that question will be yes and no, but right now I feel like we're really more closer to the animal side of things than human. Does that make sense?
I guess so.
So with the coronavirus, there's like, what do you call it? We're actually within evolution. Whereas with that voice, whereas with other things, it's like we can sustain ourselves on our own. Like with what do you call it? I guess earthquakes aren't really evolution, like part of. I guess it could be.
Yeah.
It could be. But we do adapt pretty well.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a bit of a rough patch there.
And it's hard because, like, it's not... Well, of course it's dangerous. But, I don't know. I'm not going to say that.
But you want to go outside?
No. It's like... It might not even be as dangerous as the measures that we're taking. And it's more of like a political, social, infrastructural
for sure
issue, and more maybe that's a part of evolution as well.
I guess
us reacting to it and taking measures from like considering the economic perspective, the political perspective.
Well, if you're looking at it from like an individual evolution perspective, right? Evolution, the theory of evolution comes about with variation within a species, right? A change in environment. With that change in environment, that's a selective pressure. So that actually wipes out a certain percentage of our species. And that's the cost that we have to take in order for humanity or humans to evolve. That is the concept of not just humans, but animals in general. Like, that's the concept of evolution. We need to have some people wiped out without that variation to survive, as cruel as it sounds.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about economy and if you're talking about businesses, now we're talking about communities. We're not talking about the individual level anymore.
Yeah.
We're talking about more of this collective
Yeah.
evolution. And I feel like that is a little more difficult and complex when you think about it.
Yeah, for sure. Like, I don't know. Do you think we'll be more ready for it, like, in the future if there were to be another virus?
In terms of society and the social part of it, yes, it has taught us different ways that we can adapt. But biologically, we will never know.
Yeah.
Because it's like the new virus, right? Like, we can't know the structure. We do know the structure. We can't find any ways to combat that.
Yeah.
But I feel like with the vaccines, right? Like, it's going to take a while to develop. And that's what people have in mind when we're talking about, like, social distancing and staying indoors and stuff like that. So I feel like that's really all we can do right now. If you're not a, what do you call it? Immunologist.
Or
virologist. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, Jerry. And also, I just want to mention that I think it's a good chance for us to think about general health.
Yeah.
Because I know that a lot of, like, people who does the virus or who suffers a lot with the virus has some sort of pre-existing condition, medical condition.
Yeah.
And, like, if this virus doesn't make a lot of people realize, and I'm sure it has, that eating healthy, doing what's best for our bodies is beneficial, then I really don't know what else. Yeah. So maybe it was a good, I don't know, I don't want to say wake up call, but if you could think any positive about this virus positively, then I think it could be that.
Yeah. And also, like, in terms of just things that you could do, I was thinking, like, you know that meme that you posted on your Facebook, right, of the running one?
Oh, yeah.
What is it? What was it?
I was like, I wonder if he's thinking about me. Oh, I'm going to...
If I don't... what is it?
If I don't get to that pole before that car, I'm going to die.
Yeah. So
and he's running.
I feel like you could implement that into, like, now. Okay? Like, so if that's not a real threat, you know? But you're creating these little, like, goals in your brain to trick yourself into reaching that goal. So I feel like with this lack of structure, we can create illusions for ourselves to achieve what we want to do. So I think that's a really good idea.
Like health-wise.
Health as well, and, like, in terms of, like, work goals as well.
Right.
So creating, like, false deadlines or goal setting, and just, like, creating spaces for working as well. Like, in this space, I'm going to just focus on work.
Yeah.
You know, so that could be a way that could help. And that could be another adaptation that we have.
Yeah, maybe people could be more awakened by other things, activities, like programming and stuff.
We would hope so.
A lot of my friends are getting into programming because of this virus.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's part of nature.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say.
You're going to get hate.
I can only say that because I'm a healthy individual. You know, and I hate that.
Yeah.
So it's a touchy subject.
It is. Okay, so we're just coming up on time. If you could, one last question. If you were to recommend one thing to do every day that could better your brain health, your opinion, what is the one thing? It could be even like a mental, like, telling yourself this, or living with a smile on your face. What would it be? Making a funny face.
That's really hard.
What do you try to do every day in your life to better yourself? Do yoga? Meditate?
I do a lot of things.
Yeah.
But I feel like one thing does it have to be one activity? Or
No.
Anything. Just knowing that you can change. Just repeating that in your head all the time.
Right.
And that life is freaking short. So just having those, like, having that mentality of, like, life is too short.
So you can you have no excuse not to change right now.
I mean, no, or you can do what you want.
Yeah, that mentality is very optimistic, but
Well,
also not
I mean,
at the same time.
Yeah. But I think that's like the one thing that has changed me. My fear of death.
Which we will talk in another podcast. Okay, yeah.
I hope that was good.
No, I mean, like, it's what you do, and if I'm sure other people do think that
I mean,
way as
it's had a huge impact on my life. And
Yeah.
how-
Yeah.
Life's too short to be worrying about petty shit. That's all.
That's true. Me too. I think about that sometimes too. Okay, where can people contact you? Where can people reach you? So my sister is
Come to my
on on Instagram at Minasa Kasai. You gotta say these things yourself.
Minasa Kasai.
How do you spell it?
Minasa Kasai.
Okay, Minasa.
And I'm on Tumblr.
As because you're a teenie.
And Facebook.
And Facebook.
And LinkedIn.
Are you on LinkedIn?
I think so.
Whoa, got you.
And I also have a ResearchGate
Website. Oh, okay. Awesome. And my sister is actually helping me with a lot of Barbell Radio stuff, so cheers to her as well.
Cheers. Let's go drink.
Ding ding ding. Okay. Oh no. Okay, I was just gonna mention I will link some of the studies that Minasa wants me to in the description, so you can yourself go to the link and maybe read some of those as well. So that might become useful.
Hell yeah.
Okay, thank you for being on the show, Min.
Thank you for having me, Ken.
Okay, bye bye. Barbell Radio.
Okay, hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know what you thought about this as a direct message or comments on my YouTube version of the episode. I would love to hear about what you think. Now follow us on Instagram, Facebook, or whatever it is. We are uploading information about the episode regularly. Anyway, stay safe, stay healthy, and have a good week! Woohoo!